everybody, it's Romania Black, and I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I have recorded part one of our journey through the novel of Thousand Autumns. So I finally have the book actually out today for this reaction. But yeah, I don't know if you watched part one, but you may have noticed that Romania was slightly losing their voice and being like, I was like, man, my throat's really scratchy and I feel like I've talked forever. Well, the next day after I recorded part one, I started getting symptoms of the flu. And then the next several days, I had the flu. It was not a fun time. So I spent like a week after recording part one with the flu, which was not fun. And then I spent the following week in recovery of the flu. So now I just have this like lingering cough that won't go away, and maybe eventually it will decide to do so. But I have been hunkering down with tea and doing the best I can to heal myself up. And I got home from work tonight and was like, I cannot wait to dive into the second part of this novel. So that's why we're here, y'all. The only comment that I have is from Rast, who pointed out something very good about part one, where they said, one of my favorite things about Yan Wuxi is we know high-level cultivation kind of slows down or stops aging. So Yan Wuxi has chosen to look older. He chose to be a daddy, and we thank him for it every chance we get. So I loved that. That was great. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Rast. Thank you so much. Speaking of Rast, before we dive any further into this, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank you all so much for your kindness, for your generosity, and for supporting my channel. Obviously, thanks to everyone on Patreon. I have several tiers on my channel. It can be anywhere from $1 that you donate to the channel each month, or it can be up to like $10, which is what the philanthropy tier does, and they are amazing. So thank you to Alex Cornejo, thank you Alexandra Q, thank you to Be Happy, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Daniel, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, to Diana Williams, to Ichu, Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, El Freya, Lyndon, Lou Genesis, Murphew, Rast, Rose Jennison, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Translucent Men, Zero Anti-Zero, Sean, as well as Jason N. and Nicholas. Thank you all so much. All of my love to you all. And thanks to everybody over on Patreon. And look, I get it. If you're not on Patreon, you can't afford to throw some bones. I understand. But please do me a favor over here on YouTube. Give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so that you can see me discuss and read Thousand Autumns every Monday. Unless, I go on break or something, because it's going to happen in April. So, but anyway, see, there's that stupid cough. We're going to hope it doesn't hinder our reading enjoyment for this week. But we have some good chapters ahead. We ended with chapter 5 right as Shen Qiao decides to leave after Yan Wuxi boots him out. Which the funny part is, he really just got booted out because he chose not to follow through with Yan Wuxi's plan. And the funny thing is that Shen Qiao's like, well, if I ever meet him in person, I'm gonna have to say thank you for all he's done for me. And I'm like, girl, I'm like, Shen Qiao, Yan Wuxi is not doing you any favors. You just think that he is. It's great. But we are going to be looking at, I have my handy dandy list of our chapters that we're going to be exploring today through Thousand Autumns. And that is going to include chapters 6 through 11. Now, for some reason, it's basically covering what the audio drama episode 2 covers. So it is going to be covering pages 57 through 102, but apparently that's not where chapter 11 ends. It goes on a little bit further, so we'll do what we can. We'll do what we can. It's just covering what we can. I had the same issue come up with I think Heaven Official's Blessing, so it'll be fine. It'll all be worth it. But yeah, we're gonna be looking at pages 57 through 102 today, which is a nice little chunk. So I've got my hot tea ready to go. And I'm pretty excited. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. Thank you all so much for joining me on my journey through Thousand Autumns. Last week, or rather the last time I recorded, we had some extra things come out, which was pretty exciting. So I'm all about it. But we are going to start chapters 6 through 11, part of 11 anyway. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's get this party going. I did catch a sneak peek at chapter 6's title, and I was like, okay, Chin Gong. Let's get into it, shall we? So chapter 6, Chin Gong. More than 200 years had passed since the people of Jin had migrated south, and the north was finally finding some stability after weathering the uprising of the 5 barbarians. Oh. The kingdoms of Qi and Zhou were separated by a border. One lay to the east and the other to the west. The Emperor of Qi, Gao Wei, was erratic and outlandish in his actions, and it was his negligence that had brought about the northern Qi's decline and the spread of vagrants and refugees. Meanwhile, under Emperor Yuan Yang's rule, northern Zhou flourished more with every passing day. Within its borders, life was stable and the people were prosperous. It was a fair distance between Funing County and Zhou, and many refugees also traveled along those roads. If one started on the journey with little preparation, they would soon truly understand what it was like for both heaven and earth to ignore their pleas. Basically, it's like Oregon Trail. You got to plan for that shit. A drought had taken hold in northern Qi the year before. Even when winter came, there had been very little snow, and so the famine continued into the current year. Then refugees could be seen walking the entire distance from Yiqing to the Qin border. Rumor was, as my dog asks me to throw said toy, that in some places, starving people had even begun eating each other's children. Excuse me? What? Why? You can't have a Danmai in this series. You can't have a Danmai in existence without it taking like a twisted, extremely dark turn, like right off the bat. Eating each other's children? What? I'm sorry, what? Shen Qiao considered his poor eyesight and inability to fight. If he somehow find himself in the company of cannibals, he'd most certainly end up on the dinner menu. You're too hot for that, they ain't gonna eat hot. So Funing County was closer to Yiqing in the north, and although they'd had little rain there either, they hadn't suffered any great disaster, so the area was comparatively more stable. The county was also large, and since the temple festival had begun, the town was lively and bustling as many people came and went. So the phrase, eating each other's children, refers to what some starving parents on the brink of death did when they couldn't bear to eat their own children. They exchanged their child for an unrelated child, and then cooked and ate that one instead. But you have to know that you exchanging your children means that the other family is probably going to eat your kid. Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. No. Qi and Zhou were northern countries, and during the North's early years, Zhanbei customs had prevailed. But as time went on, Han influence gradually took over, and now even their clothes and jewelry mostly embodied Han refinement with a Zhanbei touch. I like that we're getting some culture into this because I have no clue about this sort of thing, so that's very interesting. The upper-class nobles pursued elegance and splendor, wearing long trailing ribbons and tinkling beads of jade. Their aspirations shaped the trends for all folk, so every rich family without exception wore full-length gowns. And there were also hats and flowing skirts in the northern fashions. With such a myriad of styles, the scenery in this Funing County town transformed it into a little capital during the Temple Festival. The Temple Festival was being held at the newer Duke Zhang's temple, where, of course, the one they worshipped was the Grand Duke Zhang, Zhongsheng. The original Duke Zhang's temple was located on the south side of town. It was said to have been built during the Han Dynasty, but later damaged by war and then completely abandoned. Now only a dilapidated shell was left, and even the statue of Duke Zhang had gone missing. And so the empty, ramshackle temple had become a shelter for beggars and paupers. Apparently, Zhang Jie, the Chinese noble and prime minister who lived during the 11th century BCE, is sometimes considered a Taoist immortal and is who this is based off of. So, okay. Recently, a new resident had moved in, and he was named Qin Gong. During the day, he'd work at the town's granary as a seasonal laborer, loading and unloading rice from carts, only doing heavy work, which is where we first met him in the Donghua. As his pay was meager, he couldn't bear to spend it on rent. So when night fell, he returned to the broken-down temple. He was quite content with this arrangement, but there were 2 beggars living at the temple too, so he couldn't make it his permanent residence. He had to keep his money on him at all times, and even needed to watch his food to keep them from pilfering it when he wasn't paying attention. When he returned on this particular evening, he noticed immediately there was an extra person in the broken down temple. A man in a grayish-white robe was sitting there. Can't imagine who this is. The first thing Qin Gong did was frown involuntarily. The temple wasn't roomy to begin with. Adding another person was like snatching away another piece of his territory. Then he noticed the other man was holding a paper packet in his hand and slowly eating from it, bite by bite, with his head lowered. The aroma fanned out from the paper packet. It was the aroma of a donkey meat sandwich. Apple, no! Sorry. That's from officials. That's from Modao Sushi, actually. So, sorry, Modao Sushi. He recognized the smell immediately. Qin Gong had eaten one a couple of times when his father was still alive. But after his father's death, his stepmother had teamed up with her own children and chased him out of the house. Oh, damn! He earned so few coppers from hauling rice every day that he yearned to break them into more coins to use. Where would the chance to taste a donkey meat sandwich even come from? The aroma stirred up his long-forgotten memories. Qin Gong couldn't help but gulp down a mouthful of saliva. With a second look, he noticed that the next to the man was another bulging paper packet. That meant there was still another donkey meat sandwich. It wasn't only Gong Chen or Qin Gong who had noticed. The other two beggars had too, and one of them was already yelling, "Hey, if you want to stay here, you got to ask us first. This temple is small and it can't hold that many people. Hurry up, get on out of here." Qin Gong knew they were deliberately picking a fight. He made no sound, just walked up to the spot where he usually stayed and sat down, gathering up some straw. He kept his ears pricked, and he kept that donkey meat sandwich fixed in his sight out of the corner of his eye. "I have nowhere else to go either," said the gray-robed man in a gentle voice. "I saw that there was still room here, so I wanted to come in and rest for a while. If this brother is willing to accommodate me, then I will be deeply grateful." The beggar said, "If you want to stay and rest, fine by me. Just hand over everything that you've got on you." Qin Gong sneered with mild disdain. "I don't want your things. As long as you pay me with food, I'm willing to fend off those two for you." The beggar said angrily, "Ah, Qin Dalong, we weren't even talking to you, so why are you running your mouth?" Qin Gong was only 16, not very old at all. They did him so dirty in the Donghua, he looked way older than 16! He wasn't tall or strong, but his youth lent him flexibility and great endurance, and he was ruthless to the bone. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have been able to lay stake to the largest patch of territory when he'd moved into the temple after the beggars. "What, so you're allowed to talk but not me?" Qin Gong said lazily. They were beggars, yes, but in this town all the beggars band together and shared information. Since there were two of them, they figured they needn't be afraid of Qin Gong. The beggar didn't pay Qin Gong any further heed. Instead, he got up and grabbed for the donkey meat sandwich next from the man in gray. "Cut the crap! Hand over everything you've got! You want to enter these lands here in these temple gates? Well, I'm your Grandpa Lai, and I call the shots!" But before his hand could touch the food, someone grabbed his wrist. The beggar was furious. "Qin Dalong, why don't you mind your own business? You even got an issue with me eating something?" With his other hand, Qin Gong snatched up the donkey meat sandwich. "Well, I want to eat too. Why didn't you ask me?" As he spoke, he unwrapped the packet and took a bite. "I've already had some. You want the rest?" he asked gleefully. The beggar threw himself at Qin Gong, trying to hit him. Qin Gong quickly stuffed the packet into his lapel, and then the two of them fell into a heap, brawling. The other beggar, who'd stood off to the side, joined in as well, and the fight grew from 2 people to 3. Compared to the other two, Qin Gong wasn't as strong, nor was he as tall. But the secret to his victories was that he fought without any regard for his own life. He was unflinchingly vicious. So the one word that he says means, literally eldest son. Oh, okay. The uncle thing. After kicking one of the beggars hard in the stomach, Qin Gong dusted off his hands. With his hands on his hips, he spat, "I've put up with you guys for long enough. You were always messing with me just because you were here first. You even spat my food in secret when I first got here. Don't think I didn't see. You still want to fight? Bring it on. I've got nothing anyway. I've got nothing to lose but my life. If you've got the guts, then bring it." It was exactly this viciousness of his that terrified the beggar. Hearing Qin Gong's challenge, he looked down at his partner, who still lay flat on the ground, unable to get up. He chickened out immediately. Clutching at his middle, he turned and ran. When his partner saw him go, he didn't dare keep fighting either. He crawled to his feet, still holding his stomach and making noises of pain. Then he snarled, "Just you wait, you brat!" With those last words, he hobbled out of the temple. Qin Gong fished the half-eaten donkey meat sandwich out from his lapel and took another bite. Satisfied, he said, "Not bad. Did you buy it from the Lee family in the south of town? The meat is chewy, but it's still hot, and it's going to burn my throat." He felt like the brawl was worth it, just for this bite of donkey meat. He'd been thinking those two were eyesores for a while now anyway, and after seizing this opportunity, he'd have the place all to himself in the future. That was great. When the man in gray made no reply, he added, "Hey, I'm asking you a question. What, you mute?" The other man looked up. "You chased them off. Aren't you afraid they'll come back for revenge?" Only then did Chen Gong realize something seemed wrong with the man's eyes. His gaze was dull, and even though he was looking in Chen Gong's direction, he didn't seem to be looking at him. Once Chen Gong took in the bamboo cane at the man's side, he understood. This wasn't a mute, but a blind man. He clicked his tongue in disdain. "Afraid? I've never been afraid. What can these losers do?" Chen Gong looked the man in gray up and down. He was dressed in the coarse clothes from head to toe, and neither the style nor the material was anything special. The only noteworthy thing was his face. Bluntly speaking, he didn't look much like another homeless person, like Chen Gong, but more like a wandering scholar. "What's your name?" Chen Gong asked. "You don't look like someone who's in trouble. What are you doing in a place like this? Even rats don't want to nest here." The man in gray nodded in his direction and smiled. "My name is Shen Qiao. I fell ill and was without any money. This was the only place I could find to stay for a few days. Once I've earned a little money for the journey, I'll return home. Thank you for helping me drive away those other two. How should I address you?" There had been both truth and lies in Yu Xinyan's words, so he wasn't completely trustworthy. But in the end, Shen Qiao had no place to go other than Zhangdu Mountain. After giving it some thought, he finally decided to head there first. Zhangdu Mountain was located on the border between northern Zhou and southern Qin. There were two ways to get there. The first was to travel southwards all the way from Funing County until one crossed into Qin, and then bear northeast, which was a rather indirect route. The other way was to head directly south from this place, which was a comparatively shorter journey and somewhat more convenient. So, I like that Shen Qiao, took what you told him and was like, I'll just go to Mount Zhangdu first and ignore everything you told me. Shen Qiao chose the latter way. Even though the world around it was in chaos, Funing County had been spared from disaster and was still peaceful and prosperous. A single piece of pure land in the turbulent world. And what Shen Qiao said was true. He was penniless, and this was the best place to rectify that situation. His eyesight was recovering very slowly, but he definitely made some progress. In the daytime, with enough light, he could see some vague and blurry outlines. This was much better than when he'd just woken up and couldn't even see this hand that he held in front of his face. Chen Gong sat down. "Well, anything's fine. My name is Chen Gong, so you can just call me Chen DeLong. I ate one of your donkey meat sandwiches earlier, so let's just say that's your rent for today. But I also helped you chase off those two guys, and when we add that onto the cost for tomorrow's stay, you're going to have to pay me 3 donkey meat sandwiches tomorrow." Shen Qiao smiled very well. When he saw him agree so readily, Chen Gong became suspicious. "What are you going to buy donkey meat sandwiches with? Didn't you say you had no money?" "I'll simply earn some more." "You? I've heard scholars being bookkeepers and accountants, but you can't even see," Chen Gong said, full of ridicule. "How can you do bookkeeping? Don't tell me you're going to haul rice, too. I'm telling you, 3 donkey meat sandwiches, not one less. Don't think you can weasel out of it. You can ask around about me. I, Chen Jialong, may have nothing else, but even ghouls are scared of fighting me. Didn't you see those 2 losers just now? If you can't bring me 3 sandwiches tomorrow, you can sleep outside and eat air for dinner." Shen Qiao was good-natured. He didn't get angry when Chen Gong used such a tone with him. He even smiled and agreed. Although the ramshackle temple was very broken down, leaking from all sides and without even an undamaged window, its redeeming feature was that there were many pillars supporting the altars, which could be used to shelter from the wind. Chen Gong had also brought in some straw sacks and firewood. He used the straw as a blanket to keep out the drafts and burned the firewood for warmth. Of course, these had only been for himself, but now that Shen Qiao was willing to bring offerings to the temple, Chen Gong reluctantly shared some straw and wood with him. Then he saw that Shen Qiao was actually well prepared. Inside his bag was a thick old garment that he used as a blanket. At this, Chen Gong couldn't help but give a cold snort. The 2 beggars didn't return. They'd probably found some new shelter. Chen Gong brazenly claimed the clothes they'd used as blankets for himself, but when he caught a whiff of the sour odor on them, he curled his lips and threw them away. and then moved himself closer to the fire. His original plan was to snatch Shen Qiao's garment for himself as well, but on second thought, he could just wait to strike until the other man ran out of offerings. With this thought in mind, he inadvertently fell right to sleep. Early the next morning, Qin Gong got up and prepared to go to work at the granary as usual. He looked around. Shen Qiao had vanished, leaving only a pile of straw that still held his imprint and a heap of dark ash, what was left of his firewood. Qin Gong didn't think much of it and headed off to the granary. He didn't believe for a moment that Shen Qiao would really return with 3 sandwiches that day. After all, if the guy had any money to spare, he wouldn't need to stay in a broken-down temple that even ghosts steered clear of. Not to mention that he was both feeble and blind, so what was he going to do to earn money? Don't you dare return empty-handed. I'll beat you up so badly even your mother wouldn't recognize you. That evening, Qin Gong walked towards the broken-down temple, all while silently mulling this over. Before he'd even stepped through the door, he smelled a faint, familiar aroma. The sound of his footsteps seemed to draw Shen Qiao's attention. The man raised his head and smiled in Qin Gong's direction. "Oh, you've returned. Donkey meat." Qin Gong only got those 2 words out, a stern look on his face when he stopped short. For then he saw 3 paper packets stuffed with donkey meat sandwiches, neatly placed upon the straw where he slept. "Ow, Qin Gong, you precocious teenager! What did you expect? What did you expect? For a moment, Qin Gong froze, and then he said, "Did you bring these?" Chapter 7, The Weakling Who Wasn't Weak. Shen Qiao nodded. "Didn't you ask me to return with 3 donkey meat sandwiches?" Qin Gong noticed that then Shen Qiao had changed into a new green robe. The gray robe he'd worn before was beneath him, being used as bedding. And the person himself was still as clean and tidy as ever. Perhaps he'd managed to find somewhere to take a bath. "Where'd you get the money from?" Qin Gong was suspicious. Shen Qiao smiled. "I did it the ethical way, of course. Look at me. Do I look like I could steal anything?" Qin Gong harumphed. "Well, who knows?" That said, he still picked up a sandwich. It was warm and soft to the touch, clearly fresh off the stove. He opened the paper packet and took a bite. The sandwich was baked golden brown, and when he bit into the crust, juices gushed out and a smoky, rich aroma filled the air. Qin Gong's gluttony flared up, and he ate 2 in one go. He couldn't bear to eat the final one, though, and after thinking about it, he decided to leave it for tomorrow's breakfast. He could have it right before going to work. He turned his head to look at Shen Qiao, who was still sitting there, cross-legged with his bamboo cane in his arms. His eyes were gently closed, and Qin Gong couldn't tell if he was resting or thinking. "Hey," he said, "where are you from?" Shen Qiao shook his head. "I don't know. I fell while on the road and knocked my head, so I forgot many things." "Oh, you lied, sir! Oh! If you don't want to say, then just don't. What kind of excuse is that? You think I'm a real sucker, do you?" Displeased, Qin Gong lost all interest in chatting and lay right down. But then, perhaps because he'd overstuffed himself, no matter how he tossed and turned, he couldn't fall asleep. So Qin Gong had nothing else to do but try talking again. "Well, hey, where exactly were you all? What were you doing all day? How'd you earn that money?" A soft voice came from the other side of the temple. "Reading palms and telling fortunes." "You know how to read fortunes?" Qin Gong sat up and faced him. Shen Qiao was still sitting in place, cross-legged. "Honestly, it doesn't involve much reading," he said with a smile. "But a person's palm will always give away traces of whether they're rich or poor. It's just a trifling skill to earn a little pocket money." Qin Gong perked up. "Well, you can see if riches and glory are my fate as well? Let me feel your hand." Qin Gong extended his hands to him, and Shen Qiao stroked them for a moment. "You're used to carrying heavy loads on a daily basis, so you must be working seasonally at a granary or at the docks, correct?" "What else?" Qin Gong was not stupid. He knew Shen Qiao must have drawn his conclusion from the thick calluses that covered his hands. "You're stubborn, tough, and defiant in disposition, as well as a bit distrustful. You must have fallen out with your family when you were small, and you probably had a stepmother or a stepfather." Qin Gong couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. "What else?" Shen Qiao smiled. "With the world in turmoil these days, there is one thing you can do. With your character, if you join the army, there's a chance you'll be able to really make something of yourself." "How'd you manage to see all this?" "Your accent is local, so you couldn't possibly be a refugee from afar. But local citizens usually have houses, unless something went wrong with their family. Given your personality, chances are it's like I said, and you fell out with yours. Ha ha! The shade! But even if you had fallen out, if your father and mother were around, they wouldn't have just sat back and watched you end up outside in the rain or the wind. So either your father must have married a severe stepmother, or both your parents have passed early. Well, he laid out his reasoning step by step, and Shen Gong was finally mostly convinced. Well, then how do you know I'll be successful if I join the army? You don't want to live beneath your stepmother's temper, so you left home in such a fury you'd rather stay out here. And last night you fought those beggars over donkey meat sandwiches. Therefore, I can tell that you're a person who's ruthless to both yourself and to others. If that's the case, you'd be well suited in a military environment. Shen Gong snorted coldly. So basically, you just look down on people like me who can't manage a full meal and needs to steal your stuff. All this beating around the bush, but it turns out you're just making fun of me. Shen Qiao smiled. Who am I to look down on you when I'm in such a sorry state myself? Didn't you just ask me to demonstrate how I read palms and tell fortunes? I only used you as an example to explain. And I was quite correct, wasn't I? I can't make a lot of money this way, but it's still enough for a meal. If you're such a smooth talker acting like you know everything, then how come you possibly are still so down and out? Did you get robbed by bandits on the road? Possibly. I don't remember myself. Sometimes my mind is clear and sometimes it isn't. Many things are fuzzy and vague. Luckily, you were willing to let me stay here. Otherwise, I really don't know where I would have spent the last 2 nights, so I should owe you my thanks. Having been duly praised, Shen Gong became much more at ease. He even felt like it was right and proper for Shen Qiao to give him those 3 donkey meat sandwiches, as if Shen Gong had personally protected him. So, it's still 3 sandwiches tomorrow. Don't think that you can worm your way out of it by talking my ear off. All right. The next evening, when Shen Gong returned to the ramshackle temple, there were 3 donkey meat sandwiches placed upon the spot once again, just like the night before. And on the other side of the room, Shen Qiao held another in his hand and was eating away, slow and methodical, as if it weren't a donkey meat sandwich, but some kind of exotic, high-class delicacy. What a poser! Shen Gong snorted again, then turned his head and opened the paper wrapper before taking a vicious bite. And when Shen Gong returned the evening after that, 3 more donkey meat sandwiches were there again, just like before. He didn't bother with courtesies, just picked one up and ate straight away. Even though Shen Qiao was mild-tempered and quick to respond to his questions, Shen Gong always felt they were a little too different from each other, and words never made things better. He had difficulty understanding the things Shen Qiao said, and Shen Qiao seemed immune to Shen Gong's attempts to be fierce and intimidating. It was like landing a punch in cotton. Even though he clearly held the upper hand, he was the one who ended up stifled. His intuition had told him that Shen Qiao was someone remarkable, not just because of his unfailingly pristine clothes, which lent him a scholar's refined frailty, but also because there was a sense of something indescribable and unfathomable about him. Even though they were both sheltering in the same ramshackle temple, Shen Gong still felt like he was one level beneath the guy. Shen Gong didn't like that feeling, and so he didn't like Shen Qiao either. Wind leaked in all the temple walls, and the nights were freezing. There were probably far more rats than humans in residence. His shoes were torn, and it felt like something was nibbling at his toes. Oh! Shen Gong yelped in pain, but was loath to get up and seek revenge on a rat, so he simply curled up tighter instead. Amidst the howling wind, it seemed the sound of footsteps drew near from outside. But who'd come to this shithole in the midst of such a hellish wind? Shen Gong was about to doze off when he heard Shen Qiao say, "Someone's coming in." He opened his eyes and saw several skulking silhouettes slip inside, bludgeons held in their hands. The 2 in front seemed terribly familiar. With a proper look, he recognized them as the 2 beggars he'd driven away the other night. Shen Gong jolted up, awake in an instant. He quickly got to his feet. "What the hell are you doing?" One of them laughed and said, "Oh, Chindalong, weren't you full of bravado just the other day? You even drove us out of here. But we've called on our brothers from the town's beggar guild today. Let's see you cop an attitude now." Shen Gong spat at them. "What beggar guild? You're just a bunch of beggars fooling around. How is that a guild?" "Still talking smack when your end is near," the other man replied angrily. "Don't go pleading for mercy later. Brothers, this is the bastard who stole our territory. Oh, there's also a new guy. He's got money on him. We'll take them both down. With all the stuff we've got off of them, we'll buy a round of drinks." Anyone could tell at a glance that Shen Gong was destitute. Even if he did have money on him, at most it would be enough to buy a few buns. But this other man was different. His clothes were clean and tidy. Even if all they did was yank those robes off, surely they could sell them for a couple dozen copper coins. 5 or 6 figures lunged at Qinggong all at once. Despite his power and ruthlessness, in the end, he was only a teenage boy, and he was nowhere near solid or sturdy. The other side's strength and overwhelming numbers had him down and beat in just a few moments with a mass of vicious blows to his face and body. They weren't after his life, but they weren't holding back either. The corner of Qinggong's mouth was split open. All he could do was try to shield his vital areas from getting kicked. The beggars searched Qinggong over, but their final haul was only 30 copper coins. One of them spat and said, "What bad luck! We got ourselves a bum!" "Lida, didn't you say you'd have at least 50 coppers?" Lida smiled apologetically. "Well, maybe he spent it all. Anyway, there's still that other one over there." The crowd turned their attention to Shen Qiao and saw that he'd been sitting quietly the entire time, as if he'd been scared stupid. He held the bamboo cane tucked in his arms and remained unmoving. One man wondered, "Why does it look like there's something wrong with his eyes? He blind?" Confident in their greater numbers, Lida yelled, "Hey, hand over all the money you got and us grandpas will spare you a beating, you hear me?" Shen Qiao shook his head. "I worked hard to earn the money I have, so I can't give it to you." Lida sneered, "Oh ho! Quite the spine you've got. Well, that's fine then. Hold on to it. 2 days ago, you wouldn't even give up a single donkey meat sandwich. Today, us grandpas want you bloody and penniless." Several people lunged at him, intent on doing to Shen Qiao exactly what they'd done to Qinggong. They'd underestimated this frail and feeble scholar from the start. Lida moved the fastest. The one fist was already hurtling towards Shen Qiao's face, the other hand moving to grab his lapel. Judging from their positions, the fist should have hit its target, forcing the other man to topple over backwards, giving Lida the perfect chance to pounce atop him. But suddenly, pain speared through his wrist. A yelp escaped Lida. Before he understood what was going on, something else struck him in the waist, forcing him to fall to the side and knocking over his nearby companion. The two of them landed in a heap. There was no candlelight within the broken-down temple, and it was a windy night that kept the moon half hidden as clouds scudded past overhead. No one had gotten a clear view of exactly why Lida fell, so none of them stopped coming. They lunged at Shen Qiao. But then came the sound of several thwacks. A couple more people dropped to the ground. "What kind of sorcery are you using?" Lida was undeterred. While he yelled, he heaved himself upright and lunged at his opponent again. Shen Qiao's vision had been slow to recover. At night, when the light was dim, he could only see a blurred mass of shadows. The moment his attention slipped, Lida pushed him down and punched him square in the chest, forcing him to suck in a painful gasp of cold air. After a successful strike, Lida moved to grab Shen Qiao's cane from his hands, but then a point on his waist went numb, and the cane came thrusting towards him. It wasn't particularly fast, yet as Lida reached for the cane, he failed to grasp it and instead was jabbed viciously in the nose. He screamed in pain. Unable to think about anything else, he clutched at his nose and fell to the side, blood trickling between his fingers. This development took everyone by surprise. Qinggong was completely frozen, watching as Shen Qiao struck here and there with his bamboo cane. Though there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to his strikes, the beggars couldn't get anywhere near him. Instead, they all promptly were sent sprawling all over the place, wailing as they landed to the ground. "I'm going easy on you now," said Shen Qiao. "And yet, you still won't leave? Do you want me to stab out your eyes and turn you blind like me?" His voice was soft, unnerving, mingling with the wind like a ghost. Oh, buddy! Oh, our boy! Oh, there's Qinggong and him! Yes! Okay! Oh, that... Establishing that our boy Shen Qiao is like, F around and find out. Otherwise, let me be. Oh my gosh. Ooh! Of course, Lida and his friends dared not stay. Straight away, they scrambled to their feet and fled. This time, they didn't even bother with some parting trash talk, just an immediate retreat as they might wet their pants in terror. "You should have just stabbed them blind," Qinggong said hatefully. "What's the point holding back with people like that?" Shen Qiao leaned on his bamboo cane and didn't reply. The rise and fall of his shoulders was noticeable, as if he was panting slightly. Only then did Qinggong come around and realize if Shen Qiao could beat off all those beggars, then taking on Qinggong himself would be a snap. Plus, he'd yelled and squawked at Shen Qiao before. Luckily for him, Chen Qiao hadn't taken offense otherwise. A little frightened, his tone turned polite. Hey, Shen Qiao, Shen Longjun, Shen Qianbei. Just as Chen Zhong spoke, the other man suddenly slid down the pillar behind him and fell limply to the ground. Chen Gong could only stare. Oh, okay. Damn. Man, so, All right, Chen Gong. It's good to realize that he's a teenager, because that makes so much sense with his character that he's only 16, because Shen Qiao's like theoretically in his 30s. So it makes so much sense. I want to talk about this a little bit more when we get done with these chapters, but we're on chapter 8, Journeying Together. I think that was the title of the Donghua episode, honestly. When Shen Qiao came to, he saw old beams slatted above his head, decayed with age, looking almost in danger of crashing down at any moment. Someone at his side was shaking his shoulder. At first, he didn't realize where he was, and he absently muttered, "Oh, Sheedy, don't fuss." "Who are you calling your Sheedy?" Chen Gong was in a bad mood. "You slept for 2 days and 2 nights. I used all the money I had on me, and it still wasn't enough, so I took yours for now, but that's only been enough for 3 days. If we can't pay tomorrow, we're going to be kicked out. Back to the broken down temple." "Oh," said Shen Qiao. He stared blankly at the ceiling beams for a long time, his eyes vacant. Shen Qiao had no idea what he was looking at. Seeing Shen Qiao act like none of this was his problem, Chen Gong got angry. He couldn't help but shove his shoulder again. "Hey, say something, don't just stare. We're at an inn now. I was afraid they'd come back looking for revenge, so I moved you out of the temple and even hired you a doctor. The doctor said something about your stagnant chi or whatever, some kind of cold chi inside of you. Anyway, it's something bad, and he prescribed you a lot of medicine, and we've used up all the money." Shen Qiao came back to himself. "Tell him not to prescribe any medicine. Even if I take it, it's useless. I know my body best, and this isn't something that can be rushed." "Well, what's the use of saying that now? I've already bought the medicine. You're trying to tell me to try and return it?" "Oh," said Shen Qiao. "In that case, never mind. Oh." Chen Gong half squatted so that their eyes were level. "Hey, since you're so skilled, why don't we work as street performers? Or maybe we could just join the Liue Guild. They've got a branch in this county. With your martial prowess, you could definitely land a good position, and then you could bring me in." "What is the Liue Guild?" asked Shen Qiao. In the face of his blank and guileless expression, Chen Gong was forced to explain, although impatiently. "It's a guild that does business by both land and sea. On land, they mainly perform escort missions. I've also heard they do some spy work for hire and something like that. Anyway, it's a really big guild. I only found out about it when I heard someone mention it. So how about it? Let's just join the Liue Guild, and if we can find a good job, then you won't have to tell fortunes all day, and I won't have to haul rice either." By the end of this speech, he was brimming with excitement. Shen Qiao shook his head. "I've told you before that there are many things I don't remember. Those moves last night only came to me in a flash of inspiration. Memory aside, what kind of job could I get with my poor eyesight? It's better if I just keep earning money here, peacefully." The words were like a basin of cold water thrown over Chen Gong's head, and they doused even his smile. Shen Qiao couldn't see it, but he could feel the youth's dejection. "You're still young. You shouldn't fantasize about being an overnight success. We're not people of the Jianghu. Wouldn't we be out of our depth if we joined a Jianghu guild all of a sudden when we don't know any of the rules?" Chen Gong was extremely unhappy. "Well, I don't know what out of our depth means. I just know the money I earn from hauling rice every day isn't enough for even both of us to rent a room at the inn. I know the medicine and food both cost money. You might be all noble or whatever, but does money fall out of the sky? It's not like I'm a thief or a robber, so I don't talk like I only stand around all day daydreaming about money that will land on my head. Hey, what's wrong? Don't scare me. All I did was complain about you a little." Shen Qiao clutched his head, waiting for the burst of pain to pass. Slowly he said, "I won't join the Liue Guild. I'm going to Jiandu Mountain." "Jiandu Mountain?" Chen Gong said curiously. "What kind of place is that?" He'd grown up in Funing County, lived there his whole life, and never went to school, so his knowledge was limited. He'd only heard about the Liue Guild because they had a branch in the county. He'd heard little of anything else. To him, the world of Jianghu was a far distant thing. Shen Qiao shook his head without answering and then lapsed back into a daze. Hey, say something, you! Chen Gong snarled. "I used my own money to get you treatment and medicine, so you better pay me back. For the next few days, I'll set up a fortune-telling stall, and as before, soon, I'll be able to pay you back. Qingong could see that Shen Qiao was completely uninterested in joining the Liyue Guild and couldn't help but feel a little demoralized. If Shen Qiao didn't go, then who would give him a second glance when all he had to offer was the strength to haul rice? What kind of place is Jiandu Mountain? He asked. A mountain. Qingong let the non-answer hang. He thought Shen Qiao might irritate him to death. Bullshit, he said. Of course I know it's a mountain. I'm asking you what you're going to do there. I don't know either, said Shen Qiao. But someone told me I came from there, and so I want to go back and see it. Where is this mountain? Near the border of Qi, Zhao, and Qin. Qingong was shocked. That far away? How did you get from there to here? Helplessly, Shen Qiao said, haven't I already said? I've forgotten many things, and I still can't remember. If I knew the answer, why would I talk about returning there to investigate? Shen Qiao thought for a moment. How about this? I'll go with you, and you won't need to pay me back either. All you gotta do is teach me a move or two, like what you did, so I can beat 6 or 7 guys into the ground. And then when we reach Qin, I'll join the Liyue Guild, and you can head to your Jiandu Mountain. How about that? Funing County is your home, said Shen Qiao. It's a peaceful place, nearly untouched by warfare, and it's very different from the outside world. Once I leave, I'll need to go straight west, and the closer it is to Qi, Zhao border, the more chaos there will be. I have no choice, but why would you undertake such a dangerous journey? My father and mother are dead, and my step-siblings have taken over my house. I'd rather forge my own path out there than stay in Funing County hauling rice. Didn't you say I'm suited to joining the army? Well, to join one, I'll need to go where wars are frequent and soldiers are in demand, right? I don't want to huddle like this my whole life. And with even beggars bullying me and looking down on me. Shen Qiao was silent for a moment. Very well, then. He'd barely said anything when Qingong fell to his knees before his bed with a thump. Praise be to Shifu! Please accept this disciple's respects! Shen Qiao's mouth twitched. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry! Get up. I can't accept disciples, and I won't. As for the moves I have now, I might not remember them completely. At most, I can only teach you what I recall, and I can't say how effective that will be. You don't need to take me as your master. When he heard this, Qingong sprang up. Brightly, he said, all right, well, but you're older than me, so from now on, I'll call you Zhang Zhang. If anyone picks up on me again, you've got to help me out. Shen Qiao smiled, but didn't reply. Instead, he drifted off once more. Okay, so Zhang Zhang is esteemed elder brother. Qingong watched him in silence for a few moments. When he saw that Shen Qiao wasn't going to rouse himself, all he could do was turn around and leave. Shen Qiao had been gravely injured by his fall from the cliff, and with all of his bones shattered. He'd been in critical condition, but those injuries had nearly all mended during the 3 months he spent in the villa with Yu Xingyan. What had been fundamentally damaged were his internal organs, along with his martial arts. In that one turn of events, he'd almost lost his abilities entirely. Now, all that was left was fuzzy memories and a half-crippled body. Making a full recovery was easier said than done. If this had happened to someone else, it would be a severe, practically devastating blow. But in spite of that, Qingong was the angry one between the two of them. They didn't return to the temple, but instead negotiated with the innkeeper for a discount and rented the room for a month straight. All month, Shen Qiao told fortunes at the Duke Zhang's temple, and Qingong hauled rice at the granary. At night, when he returned from work, Qingong learned martial arts from Shen Qiao. His foundations weren't bad, and he had some talent, so within a month he'd made decent progress. However, without internal breathing to support his development, in the end it was little better than a castle built on air. His skills would hold up well enough against hoodlums and thugs, but if he encountered a true practitioner, all his moves would be useless. After that month, Shen Qiao and Qingong left Funing County and set off towards the west. I like that we're getting the idea that these guys have, actually been spending a month at the inn and actually training, and that there was time that passed. I'm also amazed that Yan Wuxi has, in the Dongwall, Yan Wuxi was there every 5 seconds. He was like, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? He has made no attempt to show up. I thought he was going to show up during the, fortune telling. He has not, which is interesting. Shen Qiao hadn't seen Yu Xingyan since leaving the villa, nor anyone else from Huan Yu's sect. Funing County was very close to the villa where he'd stayed, but every time he went to Duke Zhong's temple to set up his fortune-telling stall, all he saw and heard about were thoroughly ordinary people, along with the thoroughly lively market life. The Zhonghu seemed incomparably distant. So distant that Shen Qiao sometimes felt he had no need to go to Zhangdu Mountain after all, that living his entire life in Funing County might not be so bad. But now and then, a heaviness would settle into his chest. This, together with the rainy day pain that prickled through his freshly mended bones, the faint glimpses of past events that flashed through his mind, and the true qi that flitted infrequently through his limbs and entire body, were all reminders of one thing. The Shen Qiao he was now was not a whole Shen Qiao. To the west of Funing County lay Huai Province. It was a large province and was heavily defended due to its proximity to Zhou. The provincial governor there was usually appointed by the emperor himself, and from time to time the impartial censors would patrol, frequently putting the area under martial law. Although the world had been divided for a long time, the various countries put no prohibitions on trade between nations. That is, with the exception of Huai Province's provincial governor, Shen Bui, who had a peculiar way of doing things. The moment he took office, he ordered the closure of border trade between Xi and Zhou. Any merchants found engaging in trade would be severely punished. Shen Bui told the emperor that spies from Zhou could easily slip into the trading markets, then leak the details of their border defenses to the enemy. He advised that Qi close the rest of its border trade as well. And though Qi's emperor Gao Wei did not adopt this particular suggestion of Shen Bui's, he still had high praise for his loyalty and issued a decree of commendation. Shen Bui was not excessive when it came to governance. He was also heavy-handed in his flattery of Qi officials and nobles alike. The emperor's trusted subjects would often put in a good word for him, and it was only on their good graces that he'd soared from a small-time county lieutenant to a provincial governor. After considering how much they would spend if they entered the city, Shen Qiao and Chen Gong decided to stay overnight at a temple outside it instead. The next day, they'd head directly into the city for supplies. That way, they could be out of the city and on their way by the afternoon. The temple was called Chunyun Temple. They'd heard it was in use by worshippers, but in truth, it didn't look much better than the dilapidated temple that they'd lived at in Funing County. Inside Chunyun Temple, there were 3 monks, one old abbot and 2 young monks that he'd adopted. It was a simple place, with only 2 private rooms for sleeping in, one for the old abbot and one for the 2 young monks. Other than that, it was all communal cots. Chen Gong was used to living a hard life. Back in that dilapidated temple in Funing County, forget about a cot, he hadn't even had a blanket. To him, these were very cushy accommodations. Meanwhile, Shen Qiao was easy to please, the type to adapt to any circumstances. He certainly wasn't going to raise any objections either. When they entered the sleeping area, they realized that another group of 4 young men had arrived before them. They'd even brought 2 large storage chests into the room. Chen Gong was always wary of other people, so he could be hostile and didn't easily cozy up to strangers. Shen Qiao's poor eyesight meant that even though he wanted to greet them, he couldn't properly see what they looked like. The 4 people who made up the other party made no move to approach them either, just subtly looked Chen Gong and Shen Qiao up and down. When they saw there was no qi strengthening their steps, and that their clothes were shabby, the group paid them no further attention. Soon enough, the 2 young monks came in carrying their bedding. The sleeping quarters were already cramped. 2 extra people made them even more crowded. Chen Gong was bubbling over with dissatisfaction. He couldn't help but mutter, 6 people's plenty already, and now here's 2 more. One young monk heard him and whispered, "Benefactor, there's a young lady traveling with those benefactors over there, and it's inconvenient for her to share a room with us. Therefore our humble selves lent our room to her. Help others, and others will help you." Since it was a lady, she needed a room to herself. Chen Gong was still unhappy, but there wasn't much he could say. Seeing how the party of 4 were all carrying swords drained his urge to speak even more. But then he happened to see something out of the corner of his eye, and he grew excited. While everyone was eating, he took the opportunity to grab Shen Qiao and whisper, "Did you see? Did you see? Those people are from Liu Guild. The symbol of the Liu Guild is on their clothes and chests. It's exactly the same as one in Funing County." Shen Qiao smiled a little. "How could I see with my poor eyesight?" Chen Gong's excitement didn't dim in the slightest. "Say, if I find a chance to talk to them, they could take a liking to me. Do you think that they'd agree to let me join the Liu Guild?" Shen Qiao knew that Qinggong's heart was set on the Liu Guild. Even after such a long journey, he'd never changed his mind. Slowly, Shen Qiao said, I don't think that's a good idea. Oh man, I like the setup that we're getting of them showing up and seeing the Liu Guild. However, I'm so amazed that Yan Wuxi has been not present at all in any of this. That's so crazy. Why not? Asked Qinggong. Chapter 9, Terror at Midnight. I saw how you tried to approach them just now, said Shen Qiao. I like he says he saw. But anyway, and how they paid you no heed. Furthermore, they didn't say a word when both of us were there, so it seems they are either very wary or unwilling to speak with us. Either way, I'm afraid your wish will be in vain. Qinggong was upset, but he had to admit that Shen Qiao was right. I knew that those types would look down on someone from the bottom rung like me. One day I'm going to be the one stepping on everyone's heads, and they'll have to kowtow to me. Shen Qiao knew that his hang-ups came from his experiences growing up and could never be resolved with just a couple of words. So he held his tongue on more advice. I knew exactly, what that's like. The food at Chunyun Temple was as simple as the temple itself. A bowl of white congee and a few side dishes. The side dishes had been pickled right there at the temple. The taste was decent enough. Shen Qiao ate slowly, but Qinggong went fast. He'd failed to get in good with the Liu Guild, and so now he was in a bad mood. Once he'd hastily shoveled down a few bites, he returned to the sleeping area. Not long after he left, two of the other parties staying at the temple entered to eat. Though Shen Qiao could see light by now, he was still unable to discern objects clearly, and his eyes would start to hurt when he used them for too long. Most of the time he simply kept them closed and didn't use them until he had to. At that moment, he saw 4 vague figures approaching, and then sitting down at another long table. 2 of them were wearing dresses. They seemed to be women. Shen Qiao was well aware of the situation. He knew that Liu Guild must be escorting something important on this trip, so all 4 men didn't eat together at once, but left 2 behind with the cargo to keep watch. And the 2 women must be female guests who'd borrowed the young monk's rooms. Shen Qiao minded his own business. He fumbled through his porridge, and once he was done, he reached over to grab the bamboo cane at his side. The bamboo cane fell hard and hit the ground with a sharp crack. Shen Qiao frowned slightly. His hand hadn't even reached the cane, and it couldn't have fallen for no reason. Oh, I touched it accidentally, came a woman's soft voice. Please forgive me, sir. She bent down and picked up the bamboo cane and handed it to Shen Qiao. No matter. Shen Qiao took it and nodded in her direction and prepared to stand up and leave. But the woman continued, Our meeting was fated. May I have this gentleman's name? My last name is Shen, said Shen Qiao. Is Shen Zhongsheng headed into the city? That is correct. There are many inns and relay stations there, so why did you choose this ramshackle little temple instead of finding a place to stay inside the city? She was obviously trying to pry into Shen Qiao's business. If he were someone else, he'd likely counter with, Well, you're staying here too, aren't you? What gives you the right to stick your nose in? But Shen Qiao was as a mild-tempered man, and he gave a proper answer. We don't have enough money, he said. Staying inside the city would be even more expensive, so we're waiting until tomorrow morning to enter. That way we won't need to stay there overnight. His voice was pleasant, and he had an aura that drew people in. It was difficult to ignore. Despite his rough clothes, it was even more difficult to see him as the same kind of person as Qinggong. That the 2 of them hung out together despite their complete incompatibility, and that they were even traveling companions, inevitably drew suspicion. People came up to them to try to probe for a full story, especially since they were ordinary people wandering around with no martial arts ability whatsoever. His answer was reasonable, and she couldn't spot any flaws, so she warmly replied, I, too, was forward, so please forgive me. My last name is Yun. I'm called Yun Fuyi. Shen Qiao nodded. Well, enjoy your meal, Yun Nyangji. This humble Shen will take his leave now. Oh, take care, sir. Shen Qiao slowly felt his way to the door using the bamboo cane. Yun Fuyi frowned a little as she watched his retreating back, but said nothing. Hoooooo, who was sitting to her side, said, Deputy Leader, I fear that those 2 showing up here isn't a coincidence. That kid is no big deal, but the Shen guy, he may look like a blind man, but why would a blind man be wandering about? He might be here for our cargo. His twin brother, Hugh Yan, rolled his eyes at him. If you've noticed, do you think Deputy Leader hasn't? I was just testing him just now, said Yun Fuyi. He has no internal energy, and he didn't recognize my name. It doesn't seem like he's pretending either. Regardless, we should be careful tonight. I'd thought that word would travel too freely within the crowded city, so it would be safer to stay outside. But now it seems that our precautions were ineffective. What kind of treasure is in our cargo? Asked Hoooooo. We've met 2 sets of robbers already on our journey, each stronger than the last, and there's still a long road south between here and Zhongkang. What I'm afraid of is a mishap with the cargo. If that happens, losing the goods themselves might be a small matter, but staining the Liyue Guild's reputation is a large one. Though their company was small in number, they were decidedly the elite of the Liyue Guild. Considering that they were accompanied by Yun Fuyi, the deputy leader herself, their strength as a group was undeniable. But even so, they dared not take things lightly. Yun Fuyi shook her head. The guild leader gave us a strict order to escort this to Zhongkang no matter what. He sent a message earlier saying he would rush to Lo Province to meet us there. Then we'll continue south together. When they heard that their leader wasn't far ahead, Huyan and Hoooooo's spirits rose, and they started up again guessing what was in those chests that could warrant such earnest attention from the guild. The Liyue Guild's reach stretched far, both north and south of the Yangtze River. They'd transported cargo here and there countless times over the years, and even escorted treasures from the Imperial Palace, but they'd never seen the higher-ups take anything this seriously before. The deputy leader personally escorting something? And the guild leader personally coming to pick it up? That was unprecedented, earth-shattering first. I'm surprised they don't know what's in the chest. That's actually interesting, because from the Donghua, it seemed like they knew. Huyan and Hoooooo hailed from the Longmen sect, and they belonged to a small number of top martial artists within the Zhonghu. But they were still young after all. Facing 2 sets of robbers targeting their goods one after the other hadn't dampened their fighting spirits in the least. In fact, it made them all the more eager to keep pushing forward. Unlike them, Yun Fuyi was privately worried. In any case, she said, we should keep our guard up until we meet the guild leader. Night. Compared to the city, the outskirts were quieter. So quiet, in fact, it made one's flesh crawl a little. There was little entertainment to be had in the small temple at night, so everyone went to bed early. Other than Huyan and Hoooooo, Shen Qiao and Qinggong also shared their communal cots with 2 of the Liyue Guild's hall masters, and their martial abilities exceeded even the Hu brothers. Such a formidable battle formation appearing in the Zhonghu was very noteworthy. Qinggong understood little about the Zhonghu, but even he could tell that these people were all very powerful. He'd tried every means and made every effort to try and get close to them and join the Liyue Guild, but his hot fervor ran up against a frigid wall. They simply ignored him. They even extended more civility to Shen Qiao than they did to Qinggong. After several attempts, Qinggong finally grew discouraged. At times, he was frustrated and indignant. At other times, he felt he hadn't shown enough sincerity. That tomorrow he should go and tell them they only wanted to enter the Liyue Guild to clean or to do odd jobs. And then maybe they'd accept him at last. Of course, his racing thoughts kept him from sleep. After tossing and turning a few times, all of a sudden Qinggong noticed several members of the Liyue Guild moving about. Their movements were quick and light. They threw on their clothes and shoes and vanished in the span of a blink. Curious, Qinggong wanted to get up too and take a look, but then a hand reached over from beside him and held him down. Qinggong jolted in surprise before he realized it was Shen Qiao. Don't go out, stay here, said Shen Qiao quietly. Well, I'll just crack open the door and take a look, said Qinggong. I'm not going to do anything. Just as he spoke, yelling and the sound of fighting came from outside. Qinggong was immediately seized by excitement and apprehension. He felt like he'd come another step closer to the Zhongyu of his fantasies. But just as he reached to open the door, he felt his fingers go numb, and the entire set of the doors blew wide open with a powerful gust that swirled in from the outside, its winds mighty like a hurricane. Unable to dodge in time, Qinggong cried out in pain as he stumbled backwards. His back slammed into the edge of the bed, instantly turning his cry into a scream. And that wasn't the end of it, because in the next moment, someone clamped their hand around his throat. The person choking him pressed gently upwards with his arm, and Qinggong involuntarily flew with the motion. The scene before him changed from within the room to outside of it. Qinggong's eyes were wide with fear, but he was completely unable to call out. Just when he managed to find his footing, he heard someone laugh and say, Sun Long, are you stupid? One glance will tell you this kid doesn't know martial arts. There's no way he's a member of the Liyue Guild. What did you capture him for? What, he's not with the Liu Guild? Well, damn it, no wonder he was such easy pickings. I've just captured some trash. The man holding him broke into loud curses and his grip tightened. The pain was so immense Qinggong's eyes watered. I'm done for, I'm going to be killed. With that realization, Qinggong was filled with 10,000 regrets that he hadn't listened to Shen Qiao, that he hadn't just hidden quietly inside the room, but had tried to come out and watch the commotion instead. The Xionghu was still far out of his reach, but matters of life and death were close at hand. Qinggong felt a sharp burst of pain in his neck, a sign that his throat was about to be crushed. But a moment later, the man who'd been about to kill him gave a yelp of surprise, snatched his hand back, and moved away. Freed from the pressure, Qinggong's entire body went limp and he fell to his knees, coughing incessantly. When Mirangjun had been about to kill Qinggong, he'd been aware that someone else was in the room. But he hadn't taken the two of them seriously at all. They were small fry. He definitely didn't expect that the older man would have the gall to launch a sneak attack just as he was about to do away with the kid. The bamboo cane came at him high and light as a feather, without even a wisp of internal energy behind it. So Mirangjun thought he could grab it easily, but when his hand touched its edge, it slipped bizarrely to the side and thrust towards the key acupoint on his back. Mirangjun had been forced to release Qinggong, to dodge to the side. Who are you? He narrowed his eyes at the other man. We are not members of the Liu Guild, nor are we people of Xionghu. We just happen to be staying here for the night and have nothing to do with your feud. So please, show us some mercy and let us go, said Shen Qiao. There wasn't enough light for him to see Mirangjun. He could only judge his general location and clasp his hands beseechingly in the direction. But Mirangjun saw through it at once. You're blind! Within the span of a night, the tiny Chunyun temple became the center of a maelstrom. Although Yun Fuyi had long anticipated a fight, tonight's situation far outstripped her expectations. As her sleeves rolled up, she sent out a palm strike while floating backwards. Her pose was beautiful and elegant, brimming with immortal grace. To a bystander, she seemed to be drifting in dance. It was unfathomable how much power was contained within her palm. One of her opponent's sleeves furled and then flicked, easily dispelling Yun Fuyi's attack. But Yun Fuyi spotted two daggers thin as willow leaves sliding out from the sleeves. Their blades flashed, then quickly vanished, but the crushing wind behind her palm dropped away completely. This was a dire opponent, Yun Fuyi realized. Yun Fuyi, from the clouds drift spring rain, on clothes they fall yet leave no stain. As expected of Liu Guild's second in command. Outsiders all say that Yun Fuyi is a woman, so she must merely be a figurehead. Clearly such naysayers haven't had the opportunity to appreciate Deputy Leader Yun's capabilities. A silent blast of air accompanied these words, gusting towards Yun Fuyi. Her expression shifted slightly. No longer did it show the placid calm with which she'd fought before. She thrust out a flurry of palm strikes, their shape blooming in the air like a lotus blossom, and her true chi rammed forward, firing forward in an even wall. Only when the two blasts collided did Yun Fuyi realize how unpredictable her opponent's true chi was. Sharp as a needle, there was no opening it couldn't slip through. It pierced precisely into even the slightest crack, and when her palm brushed it, a billowing coldness penetrated her flesh and blood, stabbing straight through to her marrow. She had no time to withdraw. Her opponent gave her no time to react. Before the first burst subsided, a second one began, and like the rising spring tide of a river, it flooded into her, wave upon wave. She'd lost this invisible round, so Yun Fuyi thought better of her taking the attack head-on and retreated, even though it meant giving up ground. By the time she landed, a dull pain was already throbbing through her chest, the salty sweet taste of blood in the back of her throat. She didn't spit it out, but she swallowed it down, acting as if nothing happened. Who is this distinguished master? She asked. Her opponent saw Yun Fuyi's lack of reaction and made an incredulous noise. Mild surprise and respect came over his face. In all of Qi, there are very few who can withstand my palm strike. You are truly quite capable. Who is this distinguished master? Yun Fuyi asked again. The man arrogantly clasped his hands behind his back and sneered. You're in Qi now, and you wish to transport Qi's items across the border. Is the court not allowed to take an interest? Concerning today's incident, if the Liu Guild is willing to leave the items behind, we won't trouble you anymore and will guarantee your safe passage out of Qi. At his mention of Qi's imperial court, Yun Fuyi's heart pounded. She quickly put two and two together. You're a member of the Qi dynasty? Are you Murong Chen? The Murong clan had been displaced by the collapse of the Yan dynasty. And all through the next several dynasties, they'd wandered here and there. The current patriarch of the Murong family, Murong Chen, always boasted of being a descendant of the Murong royal family. Yet he'd become a lackey in the country of Qi, serving its emperor Gao Wei. It was only due to his reputation as Qi's #1 martial artist that people tried to please him with flattery and blatant displays of admiration. Under normal circumstances, Yun Fuyi would have no qualms about fighting him, but he was obviously after the cargo she was escorting and utterly dead set on having them. That meant, where are Liu Qingya and Shangyang Qingchen? Her expression twisted a touch as she asked after the two hall masters who'd been traveling with her. Hu Yu and Hu Yan were taken aback. Hallmasters Liu and Shengon were both back in the room guarding the cargo. Could they be? Harshly, Yun Fuyi said, I don't think the Murong patriarch, Qi's #1 martial artist, would need to bring his men along for an ambush. Wouldn't it be laughable if word got out? Murong Chen smiled mockingly. Deputy Leader Yan herself has stepped in personally. How could I dare be so arrogant as to come alone? In any case, we're not the only ones here tonight. Will you not show yourselves, you rats in the shadows? Ooh, okay. This story is wordy. This story is wordy. Oh my God. And we're only on chapter 10. Okay. Yan Wuxi, it's about damn time, bitches. It's about damn time. Okay. After Murong Chen's words, it was quiet all around. No one answered him. Yun Fuyi frowned. Recalling that the temple's abbot and the two young monks had yet to appear, she wondered if they'd fainted from fear or if something else had happened to them. Instead, Murong Jun and Tuoba Lingzhe appeared. They'd been sent out to investigate, and in their grasp now were Shen Qiao and Chen Gong, as well as the two hall masters from the Yue Guild. Patriarch, those chests just about had a bunch of junk in them. What we wanted wasn't there. Ah, Tuoba Lingzhe said while throwing Chen Gong to the ground roughly. Chen Gong had kept on moaning and wailing in pain on the way there. Irritated, his captor had pressed the boy's acupoint to mute him. At the moment, Chen Gong couldn't make a noise, but his face twisted in anguish. Shen Qiao had been treated a little better, perhaps because the moves he'd used left Murong Jun vaguely unnerved. He was even making sure to firmly restrain Shen Qiao's shoulders. Liu Xingya and Shengguang Qingchen, the two Liu Guild hallmasters, were usually so formidable. They were currently immobilized, their major acupoints all sealed. They were in a miserable state, faces crumpled in defeat, but they grit their teeth and refused to make a single sound. Murong Chen cast a look their way. Deputy Leader Yun, if you still care about the sorry lives of these underlings, then hand over the items. Yun Fuyi sighed. Very well. Since the Murong Patriarch only wants the goods we're transporting on our journey, the two chests are in the quarters where the hallmasters Liu were staying. Send someone to get them. Clearly, since my skills are inferior to yours, I can't object. Murong Chen sneered. Those two chests of yours are probably just a diversion. Do you take us for fools? The actual item is probably on your person and has been all this while, no? At this, even the Liu Guild members looked to Yun Fuyi in surprise. Her expression darkened. Where did the Murong Patriarch hear such gossip? And you believe it too? Those chests were entrusted to us. We were tasked with delivering them back to the Southern Qin. The owner of the items was clear on this. In fact, he was even your colleague, Zhu Rong, the late junior preceptor of the Crown Prince. After he passed away from illness, his wives and children tasked the Liu Guild with transporting his belongings back to the junior preceptor Zhu's hometown. He and our guild leader were old friends, so I escorted his order personally. That is all. Those two chests are filled with Zhurong's old personal possessions, and most of them are books, said Murong Chen. They could have disposed of 2 chests of books on the spot. Why did they need to be transported such a great distance from Qi to the south? You're asking me, said Yun Fuyi. Who can I ask? You lot have encountered schemers and robbers since you set out on this trip. Do you really think they came for 2 chests of Zhurong's old books? Perhaps there are some who thought the junior preceptor Zhu had amassed countless fortunes when alive, and the chests were filled with treasures of gold and silver. They didn't know what junior preceptor Zhu was, an honest, uncorrupt official who had left little behind. Coldly, Mu Rongjin said, "Among Zhu Rong's belongings, there's a copy of Kanghai Gleanings. I ask Deputy Leader Yun to hand it over." All the books are within 2 chests. Whatever's there is there, and whatever isn't is not. They're already yours to do with what you will. What else can I hand over? Mu Rongchen looked at Mu Rongjun and his party. "This nephew has already searched everything," Mu Rongjun told him. "There's no book called Kanghai Gleanings." From the middle of the air came a giggle. "The Murong patriarch is so patient. If you keep beating around the bush like this, I fear that Deputy Leader Yun will simply play dumb to the very end. You might as well say it directly. Shanghai Gleanings is only a cover. Inside it is the Zhuyong Strategy's volume of deluded thought. Demand that she hand over the Zhuyong Strategy scroll." Someone else was hiding nearby? Shock gripped the 2 older brothers, Huyan and Hoooooo. They quickly raised their heads and looked around, but only saw a thick sea of branches, not even a hint of a human silhouette among them. But the next moment, they spotted another figure standing behind one of the pillars of the colonnade! Oh, come on! It's about damn time! For a while now, Jin Gong had been listening to their conversation attentively, despite the pain that he was in. But when he realized he couldn't understand a single sentence, his dream of joining the Liu Guild fizzled out completely. He'd taken a real beating and was sweating from the agony. Only when the pain had died down a bit did he have the strength to lift his head and look at the newcomer, and the moment he did, he jolted in shock. They were standing beneath the moonlight. Their head was bare and smooth, their body draped in robes. It was obviously one of the Chunyun Temple's young monks. Oh! Because there'd been a female guest at the temple, the 2 young monks had lent out their room to Yun Fuyi and moved to the communal cots with Qin Gong and the others. The room had been pitch dark when Qin Gong rose from his bed at the peak of the commotion, and so all he'd known was that the Liu Guild's people were gone. He hadn't looked carefully to check if the 2 young monks were still there. But listening to it now, this young monk's voice was completely different than before. It was a delicate female voice. Okay, now, am I wrong? Qin Gong's head felt completely muddled, like it was filled with rice paste. He couldn't figure out exactly what was going on here. But the others weren't focused on whether someone had switched places with the monk or if the monk had been an imposter from the beginning. No, their expressions all changed dramatically the moment she said the words Zhuyong Strategy. "And who is this distinguished master?" asked Yun Fuyi, "skulking around like you're ashamed to show yourself in the light." I meant to sneak in quietly and then sneak out with the item the same way," said the young monk. "But Deputy Leader Yun didn't give me the chance, and the Murong Patriarch intervened in the middle of things. I had no choice but to show myself." Yun Fuyi frowned, sizing up the new arrival. She couldn't figure out where she'd come from, but the monk continued, smiling. "Deputy Leader Yun thinks herself cautious and discreet." Yet she completely failed to notice that from the moment she left the capital, many eyes were on her. The first 2 batches were just amateurs, not worth mentioning. But tonight, we have a gathering of the outstanding. Other than our Heihuan sect and the Murong Patriarch, there are still other experts who haven't revealed themselves, are there not? It's a fine night, and we've been given this rare chance to convene. Why don't we call all the rest out, so we can all deepen our friendships and have a fruitful discussion about what to do with this Zhuyong Strategy scroll? Shall the strongest take all, or shall we rip it to pieces and walk away with one each? Her tone was wry and flirtatious, but no one in the temple was laughing. Yun Fuyi's heart sank. She could barely handle Mu Rongchen, and now the treacherous Heihuan sect was in the mix. The situation had become terribly perilous, not to mention what the other women had implied, that there were still others hiding in the shadows waiting to reveal themselves. "Deputy Leader Yun, you've seen for yourself how experts have gathered like storm clouds at Chunyun Temple," Mu Rongchen said sharply. "You cannot handle them all by yourself. If you're willing to hand over the Zhuyong Strategy, then in the name of the court, I will let you go, and of course will guarantee your safe exit across the border." "The Murong Patriarch is from the court, yes, but I believe we are more qualified to say such words, given Heihuan sect's influence within Qi," the young monk spoke while smiling brightly. She walked out from behind the pillar, her face simple and plain. She barely moved, but off to the side, Murong Chun suddenly uttered a gasp and reeled back sharply, quickly letting go of Shen Qiao. With only the slightest of movements, Murong Chen flashed in front of Murong Jun, shielding him. Two shimmering lights fired from his sleeves as he lunged straight towards the young monk. Qinggong stared numbly at the two fighters' robes and sleeves fluttering beneath the moonlight, light and shadow overlapping, transforming their life and death clash into a vision of peach blossoms unfurling in bloom. Abruptly, he realized just how ridiculous it was that he'd resented the Liu gang for refusing him, and just how naive and ignorant was his understanding of the thing called the Jiangqiu. He couldn't help but look over at Shen Qiao. He was still holding the bamboo cane in hand, standing still and quiet and half hidden within the shadows, nearly invisible. At first glance, the man he knew as Shen Qiao appeared utterly unremarkable. And yet, it seemed some grave mystery lay concealed within him. It made him unreasonable, unreadable, and perplexing. As Murong Chen and the young monk began to exchange blows, Yun Fuyi glanced around the assembled crowd and her thoughts took a slight turn. Her foot moved along with them. Her footwork was swift and deft, and that one step took her as far as an ordinary person's 10. Her gait was serene and elegant. Like a mere caress on clothes, she left no trace. However, just as she'd taken this step, a pressure came from behind, as heavy as a mountain, and slammed right into her. In the middle of the fight, Murong Chen and the young monk had tactically attacked her as one. The young monk made sure to mock her with a tinkling laugh. How dishonest of you, Deputy Leader Yun! Are you trying to walk away and abandon your subordinates? Is this the way a leader of a guild should behave if word gets out who'd be willing to follow your orders? But Yun Fuyi knew that while the item was still with her, she need not worry about Liu, Qingya, and the others. Murong Chen clearly thought them beneath him, so for the time being, they wouldn't be in any danger. Hence, she decided to make a hasty exit by herself. Even though the young monk was trying to provoke her, she spoke not a word. Murong Chen alone required all her attention, and with this Heihuan sect demoness there too, the pressure she was under doubled. The three of them stood at the center of the circle. The three bursts of true qi collided in a violent storm. Fearful of being hit by crossfire, the others were forced to withdraw in the face of such a powerful display. But Liu Qingya and Shengwang Qingchen weren't so lucky. They'd been immobilized, and in their misfortune, they were both struck by blasts of true qi, which left them hacking large mouthfuls of blood. Hu Yan and Hu Yu paled in horror and leapt forward to pull the other two to safety, but they found there was no way they could get near to the three-man battle ring. On the surface, it looked like the young monk and Murong Chen had joined forces, but in truth they were wary of each other, on guard against backstabbing and cautious with their attacks. This tension is like just show me Yan Wuxi! Yun Fuyi had been losing her 2-on-1 fight, but her opponents' distrust with each other gave her space to eke out a small, precarious balance, and now, with great difficulty, she stood her ground. But this unsteady equilibrium was soon shattered. Inexplicably, Murong Chen had changed his mind. The flash of his dagger swept past Yun Fuyi's face, changed direction, and targeted the young monk instead. It carried a cold, cutting wind, as harsh as ice and frost. The young monk was busy sealing off Yun Fuyi's escape route. When she saw the dagger heading for her, she was forced to dodge. Yet those blades followed her like shadows, unrelenting. When they'd been attacking a common target, their difference in strength wasn't apparent. But, in truth, Murong Chen surpassed the young monk's ability, and now she was in a tight spot. Behind her was a pillar, and above her was the ceiling. She had nowhere to retreat. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Qinggong, and without a second thought, she reached to grab him and use him as a shield. The moment passed in the blink of an eye. To an unskilled or those ignorant in martial arts, the movements looked like lights and shadows booming and fading. They'd be unable to see any details at all. Qinggong hadn't noticed the little monk reaching towards him. His head was turned to watch Yun Fuyi and Murong Chen, but Shen Qiao noticed. He lacked even a scrap of internal energy, recalled very little of his martial arts, or his so-called martial arts, and would often forget all sorts of things. His health was poor. From time to time he'd cough up blood, and on top of that he was completely blind. But he couldn't convince himself to stand by and watch. So he chose to save the boy. Qinggong still didn't know what was happening when he was shoved hard to the ground. When the young monk saw that her human shield had been replaced by a bamboo cane, a sound of surprise escaped her. In the span of a breath, the blade arrived. The young monk had no choice but to release the bamboo cane and spread her palm, catching the dagger straight on. The blade pierced through her wall of true chi, stabbing right into her palm. If she hadn't gripped it with all her strength, the blade's momentum would have carried it even further. Instantly, her palm became a mass and a mess of flesh and blood. If the bamboo cane hadn't ruined everything, she would have caught herself a sucker and never would have been injured. Furious, murderous intent bloomed on her face. Ignoring Yun Fuyi and Murong Chen, she curved her fingers into claws and slashed at Shen Qiao. Murong Chen had given up on Yun Fuyi and turned to the young monk. He knew Yun Fuyi wasn't likely to escape tonight, regardless of who it was she faced. And indeed, as he'd expected, such an intrusion came. A jade chime rang in the darkness, distant yet clear. When others heard it, they simply heard a bell, the sound almost cleansing. But to Yun Fuyi's ears, it was like 100 needles piercing her flesh and 1,000 swords stabbing at her heart. She was in agony. Even the circulation of her true chi slowed and turned stagnant. And who was this? Panic-stricken, Yun Fuyi dropped everything and scrambled to escape, only to find she couldn't move an inch, as if held in place by an invisible net. She knew her abilities didn't rank in the world's top 10, but she'd never thought she'd find herself so helpless. Only right there at this moment did she realize how ridiculously wrong she'd been. The attacker hadn't even revealed himself, and she was already utterly beaten. Was she really doomed to fail tonight, unable to protect the item in her care? At the thought of it, a thread of despair welled up in Yun Fuyi's heart. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the young monk clawed at Shen Qiao, her fingers brutal, wild, and swift as lightning. She might have been weaker than Yun Fuyi and Murong Chen in one-on-one combat, but her skills were far more than enough to deal with an easy pickling like Shen Qiao. Shen Qiao had blocked her grab for Qinzhong with superb skill, but he'd also had the advantage of surprise. With the young monk attacking him seriously, Shen Qiao was completely powerless to counter. Qi, potent enough to overturn rivers and oceans, swept towards him in a tidal wave of murderous intent. Though they were 5 or 6 paces apart, Shen Qiao was already gasping for breath as bursts of pain tore through his chest. His vision went completely dark, and he couldn't even feel the ground beneath his feet. His entire body went soft and weak except for that one spot in his chest. It burned like fire, a stifling agony that made him long to cough up another glob of blood, desperate for relief. The young monk couldn't care less about Shen Qiao. To her, this man had poked his nose in her business without even bothering to notice how outclassed he was. Truly, he deserved to die. Sure, he was good looking, but so what? The way she saw it, Shen Qiao was already dead. And yet, when her fingertips were a hair's breadth from his neck, something else happened. And it didn't come from Shen Qiao. A hand appeared out of the darkness, stretching over to grab her by the wrist. It wasn't fast, and the movement itself was unremarkable, devoid of any flashy maneuvers. The hand was slender and pale, smooth and unmarred. She could see it was a man's hand, and the hand of someone high status who'd enjoyed many luxuries over the years. Oh! But that's the end! We're always supposed to go to page 102. Oh no! Oh, so we are going to have to get to chapter 11. Oh, next week. Oh my gosh. Oh, how dare this series do this to us? Whoa! What a tease! What a damn tease! Okay. Oh my god. I'm going to go listen to the audio drama and then we're going to come back and talk about this. Oh my god. Oh, it's so cold outside. I took a break after I got done recording this to go let my dogs go out for a hot second, and it is freezing outside. I gotta reheat the rest of my tea. Although, you would think that it's gonna warm up with Yang Wuxi freaking showing up at the end of chapter 10. So, why? This story is interesting. The Donghuan knew how good Yang Wuxi is as a character, and they were like, what? Go without him? How dare? So they had him show up quite frequently in the Donghua, way more than this novel, which is surprising to me because we don't really get to see him come into this until 10 chapters in. So my paper was wrong. It was supposed to be chapters 6 through 10. We're going to start chapter 11 next week, and that'll start where the page numbers are at. But And honestly, I want to talk a little bit about the audio drama because while I was prepping this, I was looking and listening to the audio drama, which thank you, Reiki, for helping me get access to those, as well as Treasure Chest subs. So good to have access to those. But in the audio drama for episode 2, it's basically the exact same setup that what we've just read. It's basically the same thing. However, there are 3 noticeable differences. One is the very end is Yang Wuxi actually showing up. They don't go much past where chapter 10 ended, so that made me feel better. I was like, okay, well, the audio drama episode ended where we ended, so we're all good. But it does have in the audio drama 2 moments that are not in the novel. One is that Qinggong, who we're going to talk about in this, Qinggong asks Shen Qiao, he's like, oh, you're Shizun. Like, he must be very famous, right? And it's about like the 13-minute mark of the episode, which the audio drama's ending song is freaking long. It's good, but it's really long. And Shen Qiao goes, my Shizun. And he remembers the memory that they show us, if it's a memory, is Yang Wuxi being like, send him away and give him nothing. And so then Shen Qiao's like, I just don't remember him. But he makes a note saying, like, if I do see him again, I want to thank him for saving me, which is essentially what he says to Qinggong at the end of chapter 5. So that part was interesting. The other thing is, the Donghua and the audio drama are going to make sure you know that Yan Wuxi has been paying attention and has been following Shen Qiao behind the scenes, even though the novel does not want you to know. Because at some point about halfway through this audio drama, there is a cut to Yan Xingyan, and he's like, hey, that thing that we've been looking after has gone missing, and it seems like an escort service, which is Yun Fuyi, has taken it away. And Yang Wuxi's like, oh, you don't say. And he's like, should we go after it? And he's like, no, don't do that. Where are they now? And that's to give the listener of the audio drama the hint that Yang Wuxi's going to show up where they're at with the thing. So with the celerity volume is what's going to be. But it's interesting that the novel does not let you know that Yang Wuxi is doing any of this behind the scenes. The Donghua and the audio drama, they're going to make sure you know that he's not abandoned Shen Qiao. He is in fact keeping tabs on him. But the novel does a really good job of just saying, oh, we don't know. He's just, he's not interested in Shen Qiao. And I'm like, it's a very different experience from an MXTX work going into this, because I've noticed in just 10 chapters alone, I am going to have to like train my voice and be guzzling down tea to read these chapters, because there's just something about this writing. I love it. I love how verbose the translation is. I love how rich the translation is in the descriptions, but it is hoardy. And my voice is like, I'm not sick, but I was like, damn, my voice is going to be strained. I'm going to have to like make sure that I don't watch anything that's going to require a very heavy discussion on this channel in between the novel reactions, because it's a lot of reading and it's not very, at this point, it's not very dialogue heavy. So it's lots of descriptions and exposition. And I'm like, there's not a lot of, I'm used to in MXTX's works, she does a lot of back and forth dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue in her story. And right now, we don't have as much dialogue. It's a lot of exposition. So it's a lot of reading to do. And that's good, but damn. Also, want to just say, I'm working on a video that is talking about yaoi. I know this is Danmai, so it's a different whole genre, but it's about yaoi and comparing a male-loving male relationship novel with a heterosexual couple relationship novel. Let me just tell you all right now, the MLM novel that I'm reading currently is good writing. I really like it. the heterosexual novel, the writing of this translation blows it out of the water. It's so much better. And I was like, oh my God. I was reading that first heterosexual couple novel, that romance novel, and I'll talk about it. It'll be on my channel eventually. But I was reading it being like, there are people on AO3 that are writing better at 5 a.m. than this book. And I was getting kind of mad at the writing. And now all I could think about while I was reading it was Thousand Autumns is already, its first 5 chapters are better than anything in this book. And I was like, it's so good. And it's a translation, like, not to take anything away from the translator. I mean, in all honesty, our translator of Chanchu's book, the translator is by Felicie. Felicie does a really good job. Felicie's doing a damn good job translating, so good for you, Felicie. You do amazing work. But the translation alone is better than that novel. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm reading this. It's good to read good romance, good fantasy, top tier, loving it. So, okay, I've waited long enough. We need to talk about these chapters. So essentially, the last week's chapters were all about setting up Shen Qiao's situation. And what we get in these chapters is setting up our sweet boy, Qin Gong. Which, I'm going to be real with you, Qin Gong, I like him a lot better in the novel already. And I think the reason why that is because he is 16 years old and we get that confirmed. I thought in the Donghua that this was like a man in his 20s. I really did. And I think it's the way they animated him. They made that boar boy look hard as hell. And by hard, I mean rode hard and hung up wet. That's the phrase. Come here, whiteboard coon. Get closer so we can talk about the story. But yeah, so Qin Gong's only 16. That's like so young. And knowing he's only 16, that makes a lot of his choices, a lot of his character work make much more sense. Like it makes much more sense. He's a 16-year-old kid that has been booted out of his house and is trying to be self-sufficient, but he's 16, so he doesn't make all of the best choices, you know? So I really like the way they characterize Qin Gong, and most of these chapters, these 5 chapters, are all kind of like putting him in the constant focus, especially compared with Shen Qiao. So, and we know Shen Qiao is probably in his 30s. So he definitely, it feels like, I'm in my 30s and I coach a team of 18 to 19-year-olds. I feel like how I think Shen Qiao feels around Qin Gong. I really do. So I feel that connection, and kind of like when Shen Qiao's like, I am going to train you, we're not doing that. I felt that. So it was a lot of fun. We also get, I'm not going to keep track of all the locations on Whiteboard Coon probably. Be Happy, the moderator, was super kind, and in the Discord for my Patreon, they put a map of the area so you can kind of get a feel for. I'm probably going to go back and look at that map and get a feel for where we are. But they kind of included a map on there so that we could tell where we are in here. The biggest thing is that Qi and Zhou are at war, impending war with each other, and Zhou's doing very well economically. Qi is struggling because his emperor is kind of like, he's neglectful and not very good at his job. So that's kind of where we are with that. So we establish up here that Qi is not good. Qi is in not good standing, and Zhou is doing well. We're just gonna say Zhou is doing well. They're doing a good job. Things could be worse. So yeah, so we kind of base all of that, and Funing County is where our boy Qin Gong has grown up his entire life and has been from. And meanwhile, Shen Qiao has made his way there. I do like the fact that Shen Qiao establishes that he didn't quite trust everything that our boy Shenyang told him. And I like that. There's a few good moments in this chapter set where Shen Qiao is like, I may be blind and my memory may be fuzzy, but I think a few things are off by what they've been telling me, so I'm not going to fully trust it. I'm going to go with my little innocent gut instinct, but also I'm going to, like, Shen Qiao, he is such an enigma. I can instantly see why Yan Wuxi is all about him, because he's so pure, he's so kind, he's so very straightforward in his thinking, but there's an aspect of him that's like a razor sharp edge. There's like a razor sharp edge. And I'm like, ooh, 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 ooh. It's really good. And it's just that little edge to him when he gets a little bit cold that I'm like, oh, I can see why Yan Wuxi likes you. Because he's probably like, what is this? What is all of this about him? And it's intriguing. It makes you want to know more about Shen Qiao's character and to kind of see him. Like, I don't blame Yan Wuxi for being like, don't you ever want to go ape shit? Like, I don't blame him for thinking that and telling him that. Because it's like, yeah, you kind of want to see him go get loose. So... But anyway, so the first parts about these chapters, the thing is they're very similar to the Donghua. I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot more when we get to the chapters that are not based with the Donghua, so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to brace myself for those discussions. But basically, he's like, you know, Chen Gong just does not understand who Shen Qiao is, because he doesn't have like beggar's clothes. He has some decent robes. He looks pretty well off. He's handsome. He doesn't look somebody that's been homeless for a while. He's not doing the Zushi look from Word of Honor. So, you know, he's got that going for him. I also like the way that they explained the donkey sandwiches. It's explained in the Donghua, but I like the donkey sandwiches and how the novel explains that it's Chen Gong connecting to his childhood, connecting back to when his family was whole, connecting back to when he was part of that family. There's a nostalgia factor to it. I thought that the novel did a good job of explaining Chen Gong wanting to reconnect with that. And that is, you know, it's a cool look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you obviously have, like with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's like a triangle, and at the base of that triangle is literally food, you know, but up here towards the top is like, you know, self-actualization and about yourself and your own like psychological needs. And so the concept of the donkey sandwich is sort of this cool like intersection between the top and bottom of the pyramid, where it's food to survive, but it's also tapping into like a psychological aspect that Chen Gong is trying to connect to, which is the nostalgia of his family. So it's neat. I like it a lot. I like the way that it's handled. I also like that Shen Qiao is like, I want to go back to Mount Zhandu because that's where I'm from, and I want to see my roots and know, like, why was I kicked out from there? Why did I leave there? What happened? And if I go back to the beginning, that seems like the obvious choice of what to do. I also like that Chen Gong describes Shen Qiao as a scholar. It was giving me kind of scum villain vibes. It was giving me Shen Qingqiu vibes a little bit. Which is interesting because I wouldn't peg Shen Qiao as a scholar. I would peg him as like very princely. He's a sect leader. He's like got an air of elegance to him, but a scholar makes me think of like a teacher. And maybe because in the Donghua they have Shen Qiao being very reclusive, the teacher aspect doesn't kind of come out. So it's interesting in the novel that Chen Gong describes him as such, but Chen Gong doesn't have a lot of room for experience because he's only 16. So, you know, his area of knowledge of others is pretty limited. The scope is limited, right? So yeah, so we get to chapter 7, the weakling who wasn't weak. And we get the beggars that Chen Gong chased off, that Shen Qiao was like, hey, they're probably going to come back and try to hurt you. And he's like, what? And then they do, you know. We also get the hand like scene with the fortune telling, and Shen Qiao kind of explains, you know, it's basic, you know, deduction and reasoning, Sherlock Holmes business, if you will. And then they come through and have the same attack scene that we saw in the Donghua, kind of beat for beat. One thing that I think is really interesting that I don't recall from the Donghua, and I could be wrong on this, is the fact that they end up going to the inn. And the actions that Chen Gong takes in this moment are actually really sweet, and I thought they were great. So Shen Qiao, he defends from the group of beggars that attack the two of them. He ends up defending over there, and then he collapses because, you know, he's just now getting his strength back, but it's not fully back yet, right? So Chen Gong ends up taking him to an inn, gets him medicine as well, gets him a doctor, and they end up staying a month. Now, we'll talk about the staying a month part. which I really liked that aspect. But I think it speaks a lot for Qinggong's character of how much Shen Qiao has kind of changed him in a very short period of time. Like, and it's Shen Qiao's kindness that changes him, because, you know, Qinggong is really rude to him. Like, he's, you know, if you can imagine being in your 30s and you're someone like Shen Qiao, who clearly is more capable than he seems, but you're still trying to figure things out, and this 16-year-old kid comes up to you and is like, you're going to get me food, and that's going to be your rent, and you're going to do this. Like, Qinggong starts out being super rude to Shen Qiao, and Shen Qiao could have taken it. You know, I admire Shen Qiao a lot, because I don't know if I could have been that way. I don't know if I could have been as gracious as Shen Qiao is. Shen Qiao takes it all on the chin, and he's like, okay, I will prove to you that I can make money, and I'll get you your sandwiches. It's fine. I've got my means. I know what I'm doing. It's such an elegant way of doing it. And I admire this fictional character so much for having the just like presence to just get the job done and do what he says. And it's like, okay, now what? And it's so fun because in the story, you know, a little bit of time passes, like a few days pass. But in those short few days, those acts of kindness that Shen Qiao shows to Qinggong is enough to influence him, that when he gets beat up, because the Qinggong that Shen Qiao met at the beginning of chapter 5, or chapter 6 rather, that Qinggong, if Shen Qiao had passed out after robbing the beggars, that former version of himself would have probably stolen everything, like the clothes off Shen Qiao's back, every bit of money that he had, and ran off and left him there to suffer and be, you know, like a naked beggar, you know. But the fact that Shen Qiao has influenced Qinggong so much in such a short period of time, he ends up taking him to an inn, spends his own money. This man who clearly has no money and is forcing him to get donkey sandwiches for him, takes him to the inn, pays for the inn with all the money that he has, and then gets the doctor, gets the medicine. Like, that's huge. That's a very significant thing to do. It's so wild that he goes through this transformation so quickly just by Shen Qiao's, like, just by his influence that he's had in that short period of time. It's absolutely wild. So yeah, Lai Da and the others came to attack them, and that did not go well for them. I really liked the picture of Shen Qiao just taking that bamboo cane and about to like knock him senseless, and that line that he said, "I'm going easy on you now, and yet you still won't leave. Do you want me to stab your eyes out and turn you blind like me?" And the way they said his voice was soft, unnerving, and mingling with the wind like a ghost. Like, I love that Shen Qiao never raises his voice. He's just like, this is how it is, and this is what I'm about to do. And I'm like, ah. We stand for that. I'm all about that. I'm all about a quiet king that is quietly exuding authority. Love it. Love it. So yeah. So anyway, they go to the end. We have chapter 8, which is Journeying Together. At this point, it's just Qinggong and Shen Qiao. I mean, we had the other member, like the Lai Da, but that's about it. But we start talking about the Liu gang. Glad we're getting back into them. Honestly, the Donghua has done a really good job of adapting these chapters and kind of making the pacing go as it were, because again, lots of words to get through. So they talk about the Liu gang, and Qinggong is like, well, you told me I would be great to join an army. Here's my chance. And Shen Qiao's like, yeah, that's not my goal. He's like, my goal is to go back to Mount Zhandu. So they make this idea that they're going to get to a certain point, and then once they get to said certain point, then they will part ways. And it's really neat for Shen Qiao to ask questions. Like on page 78 of the book, he's like, you know, Zhandu Mountain, what kind of place is that? He's like, I've only grown up in this one county. I've never been outside of my hometown. I don't know much about the world around me. Why is it so important to you? And Shen Qiao's like, I don't really know, but that's where I'm from, so I need to go back there to find answers to questions. I love when he's like, what kind of place is Mount Zhandu? And he's like, a mountain. Which is, I mean, he's not being a smartass. class. He's just saying what he knows. And it's so funny. And he's like, I don't know. I just need to go back. And he's like, well, how did you get from there to here? And he's like, I've already said, I don't quite remember. And so, honestly, we even get a 6'7" reference, and I didn't even notice it. But yeah, he's like, I can beat 6 or 7 guys to the ground, as one does. But yeah, and also, he basically is like, well, if you're older than me, then I'm going to call you Zhangzhan, which is basically like elder brother. And Shen Qiao's like, call me whatever you want, but I'm not training you. He's like, I don't take on mentors. He is like, I'm not a Jedi Knight, so I'm not taking on any apprentices at this moment. So they also do a good job in the novel at this point, because we're 80 pages in, of reminding us that Shen Qiao has had all these injuries and his recovery has been slow. And, you know, he's like, I really can't say no to Qinggong in a way because I was in a bad place and he did try to help me, so I do owe him a little bit, but, you know, at some point we are going to split up. And I do like that they stayed a month at the inn to, like, Shen Qiao did his fortune-telling job. I can't believe they gave us the fortune-telling in the Donghua and had Yan Wuxi show up. Maybe Yan Wuxi will show up later on and do the fortune-telling with him later on in the story. We'll have to see, but I was like, you showed us that in the Donghua. It better be in this novel, damn it. But I like that he stayed back and he trained Qinggong in just some basic things. But I also really like the description that they give where it's like, okay, I trained you for a month, but in reality, because you're 16 and you don't have the cultivation methods down, it's really not going to help you against somebody powerful. But, you know, it'll get you out of a brawl. It'll help you a wee bit. So then they go to west of Funing County is the Huai province that's defended because of its proximity to Zhou. And they talk about the governor Shen Buyi. I was like, is Shen Buyi the guy that Qinggong ends up working for? We're going to find out at some point, but that would be interesting to note. But they end up going to Chunyun Temple. That's the big place where everything's going down at this temple. And I'll be honest, it's been like months since I've seen the first couple episodes. So a lot of the stuff in this chapter set, I was like, I don't remember, until we got to the point where Bai Rong shows up. And then I'm like, I kind of know where we are now. But we have a lot of characters in this. I also like that they kind of touch on, I like the perspective this novel takes. The one disadvantage of this perspective is because we are focused on like a third person objective through Qinggong and Shen Qiao's perspective. We don't get to see like the behind the scenes Yan Wuxi is following and figuring out where they are. That's why the audio drama and the Donghua do it that way. They show us those things because you can alter the perspective a little bit. But I do like the fact that Qinggong acknowledges that because he grew up in such a bad environment, literally anything works. And Shen Qiao doesn't complain about anything, so it works for them as well. So yeah, they talk about the Liyue Guild. Shen Qiao is like, I don't think that's a great idea. And then we have chapter 9, which is Terror at Midnight. And Shen Qiao's like, look, the Liyue Guild has nothing to do with somebody with like your talents. So we get into Foon. I kept wanting to call her Foon Yui. It's Yoon Fui. My brain wanted to call her something else. And it was a struggle bus to get through here. But we have Yoon Fui, who is with the Liyue Guild. We don't have the one leader, the Don whatever his name is, the bro man with the goatee. He's not in this yet. But she has 2 lackeys with her, Hoooooo and Hooyan, the twin brothers. I barely remember them. If they were even in the story. I barely remember them. I think they were, though. But yeah, so these 2 blind men, these 2 twin brothers! I looked at that, I looked at it when I was reading, it says, this kid's no big deal, but that Shen guy, he may look like a blind man. No, the twins are not blind. They are fully capable of sight, and they call her deputy leader, our girl, Yoon Fui, and she is hauling the items of Zhurong which is supposedly a bunch of books. And I do like the Murong guy is like, really? You really think it's just a bunch of books? That seems like a very odd thing to haul and protect really severely if it's just some books. And she's like, I don't know. I was just hired to do it. You tell me. And he's like, no. But what they all suspect is that there is a volume of the celerity that Yoon Fuyi keeps on her and is the one of delusion. Convince yourself. The Jinx Monsoon perfume. Convince yourself, delusion. There is one thing that is kind of interesting is that just like in the Donghua, every character was like, yeah, Yoon Fuyi, she ain't gonna get away. She ain't that strong. She's just a sitting duck. And here in the novel, they treat it exactly the same way. They're like, someone's gonna tackle her and get the book. And it's like, and then Bairong, causes even more chaos there. So we have everybody. I like that Shen Gong and Shen Qiao are literally just the wrong people at the wrong time at this temple. Because honestly, they weren't even meant to be involved at all. We come to find out that Murong Chen and his cousin, is Jun his cousin? I think that's correct. We're going to go back and look. And Murong Jun, they both are after the celerity as well. Something else that the Donghua does that they have not talked about at all in the novel, it has not been brought up whatever, and I kept waiting for it to get brought up and it doesn't, is that Yoon Fuyi and Liyue Guild have been working with Beimu and been working with Kunye. In the Donghua, they make that clear. Here, it's not even been touched upon. We've not even mentioned it. We've not even talked about it. It's not even been brought up yet. I like the novel is keeping a lot of things mysterious and under the vest. And I feel like it's going to be very interesting when we get past the Donghua content, then it's going to get crazy because I'm going to have no clue. And if this series is being mysterious, I'm really going to have no clue until it all comes to light. So we shall see. So San Long, as soon as I heard San Long, I was like, what is this, Heaven Official's Blessing? The third son. Yeah. So San Long, he's like, I'm going to be killed. And Shen Qiao saves him. I love it. I love Shen Qiao's like, I'm not going to let you kill this kid. And Shen Qiao's like, look, we're not members of this guild. We're just here out of coincidence. I don't know what y'all are here for, but we have nothing to do with it. And Murong Jun is like, you're blind. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. So I like the way they described Yoon Fuyi's attacks, like her big lotus blossom chi, and like I like they describe it as the true chi, like what it takes form as, which is really great. But her and Murong Chen, they start to battle it out. And she realizes who they are. And she's like, well, shit, that's not going to be good. So the Hall Masters, we also get the Hall Masters that are with the Murong guys. And they are Liu Qingya, which I was thinking of Liu Qingye from Scum Villain. Liu Qingya. And we also have Shangguan Jingchen. Ta-da! Okay, so we got them. Fun times. But I didn't think that the Qi Patriarch, the Murong Patriarch Qi's #1 martial artist would bring his men for an ambush. And that's when Murong Chen is like, yeah, I may be the #1 guy in Qin. Cool me. But he's like, I know that there are multiple people in the shadows, which the Huanhe sect and the Heiwan sect, they are just like in the shadows all the time, lurking. Because we find out that Bairong is playing the monk from the Donghua. We saw that in the Donghua. I wish I would have caught it sooner, remembered it, but I've been so looking forward to Yang Wuxi coming out of the woodwork that I was just like, Bairong, who's she? And then it's like, ah, damn it, she's here too. And then, of course, Yang Wuxi is there as well from the shadows, making his move ever so coolly, of course. So chapter 10 was a damn tease. Calling this chapter Yang Wuxi is a damn tease. that's not fair. That's not fair, because I was setting up the whole time for him to show up, and he finally does, and we barely get him, and then the chapter's over. I'm like, that's so cruel. And the audio drama is just as cruel. Like, they're like, oh my god, it's Yan Wuxi, and Shen Qiao's like, oh hey, Yan Wuxi's here. And then that's when it ends. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Of course it is. So yeah. So Yoon Fuyi keeps trying to say that she has no objects on her. She's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they're like, yeah, you've got one of the Zhuyang strategy scrolls, which is one of the celerity. They're like, you have the volume of, delusion, the volume of deluded thought, which is basically delusion, but that's the volume, right? And so she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And Mu Rongchen's like, I've been sent to get it. So let's just get this over with. And they start to duke it out. Meanwhile, the monk that we find out is Bai Rong, she gets in the fray. She wants it. And she also decides during the fight that she's going to use basically Qin Gong as a meat shield. She's like, I'm going to use this guy as just being a shield in case if I need it, and I can just dispose of him and go after the book. And Shen Qiao is like, let's not do that. I really loved this book, though. The way that it's written, this book is such build up. And this book is just like, it was like tension upon tension upon tension. And it almost edges you. I feel like we're being edged as we're being read this book, because you're just like you're waiting for the battle to happen. You're waiting for the moment. And the book is just like, and then this happens. And then this happens. And then this happens. And I'm like, just have it's like you're waiting for that release. And the book is like, not yet. And I was like, it's like, and then you're just waiting for Yan Wuxi to show up. And the way they described the sword coming through and like getting into Bai Rong's palm and it just being this mess of flesh and blood. So good. So good. But yeah, and she's suddenly striking at. It's going to be interesting to see how she changes in this book, because right now she is literally like just trying to strike at Shen Qiao's face and claw at him to get him out of the way because she's pissed. And it's going to be interesting when she slows down, the bloodlust leaves, and she sees how handsome he is, to see if her tune changes. And if it changes as quickly as it did in the Donghua. That will be interesting. But yeah. And then Shen Qiao is like, he's gonna be dead. But then a slender, pale hand, a man who's enjoyed many luxuries over many years of high status, just comes and stops her right there. A hand from the darkness grabbed her wrist. And I'm like, how dare they do this? How dare they tease us with this man and then not show us? That's not fair. How dare they? So we have Bai Rong coming out of the woodwork, and they kind of reveal, who she is. They've not called her Bai Rong yet, but it's the young monk. We know who she is. But she's there in disguise. Yan Wuxi has come out of the shadows. I'm just so amazed that Shen Qiao, the first time he sees Yan Wuxi after healing, is now. Because in the Donghua, it is before. It is before then. And here they're like, nope. So we're going to see where that goes. But I was like, and then he just now shows up. And we don't even have, at this point, Shen Qiao really knows not much about the celerity. In fact, he's not even after any of those things. He doesn't even know about the Liu Guild with Beimu and all that. None of that's known knowledge. All he's trying to do is Shen Qiao is trying to get back to Mount Zhandu. That's all he's trying to do. And Shen Gong is trying to find a way to join the Liu Guild, which we'll see how that pans out. And then meanwhile, there's this squabble between all these people over the celerity that Shen Qiao had no clue about. But the question is, was Yan Wuxi like edging him towards the celerity? I don't think so, because he seems to just be keeping track of where the celerity's going, and it just happened to work out that it was where Shen Qiao was. But do we take that, or do we think that Yan Wuxi was actually keeping tabs on him? These are important questions. These are important questions that have been deserving of an answer. So, yeah. I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that gets very impatient with these first couple of chapter sets because I know what happens in them. So I'm like, okay, we're just reading to figure out what happens. And I want to get to like the stuff that's new, the stuff we have no clue about. But there's another part of me that's kind of thankful because my voice is going to be shot at the end of reading all of these. So I'm very curious to know what you all think about these chapters and about Qinggong's character, and especially Qinggong compared to the Donghua. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but this was a good episode set, but I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be hard I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break so my voice can heal so that I can get into chapters 11 through 15, which we will be looking at next week. So, yeah. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm going to be back very soon with more discussion and talk of Thousand Autumns, chapters 11 through 15 next week. And I'll see you then.